The Euphrates is the longest and one of the most historically important rivers of Western Asia. Together with the Tigris, it is one of the two defining rivers of Mesopotamia. Originating in eastern Turkey, the Euphrates flows through Syria and Iraq to join the Tigris in the Shatt al-Arab, which empties into the Persian Gulf. Etymology. The ancient Greek form Euphrates was borrowed from Old Persian Ufratu, itself from Elamite Uip. The Elamite name is ultimately derived from the Sumerian Buranuna, possibly through the Akkadian name. In Akkadian the river was similarly called Purachu, which has been perpetuated in Semitic languages Rat, Arabic Al-Furat, and in other nearby languages of the time. The Elamite, Akkadian, and possibly Sumerian forms are suggested to be from an unrecorded substrate language. Gamkralidze and Ivanov suggest the Proto-Sumerian *Buradu, copper, as an origin, with an explanation that Euphrates was the river by which the copper ore was transported in rafts, since Mesopotamia was the center of copper metallurgy during the period. The earliest references to the Euphrates come from cuneiform texts found in Shuruppak and pre-Sargonic Nippur in southern Iraq and date to the mid-3rd millennium BCE. In these texts, written in Sumerian, the Euphrates is called Buranuna. The name could also be written Kib, Nun, or Dkib, Nun, with the prefix d indicating that the river was a divinity. In Sumerian, the name of the city of Sippar in modern-day Iraq was also written Ud-Kib, Nun, indicating a historically strong relationship between the city and the river. Course. The Euphrates is the longest river of Western Asia. It emerges from the confluence of the Kara-Su or Western Euphrates, and the Murat-Su or Eastern Euphrates, 10 kilometers upstream from the town of Kaban in southeastern Turkey. Dowdy and Franken put the length of the Euphrates from the source of the Murat River to the confluence with the Tigris at 3,000 kilometers, of which 1,230 kilometers falls in Turkey, 710 kilometers in Syria and 1,060 kilometers in Iraq. The same figures are given by Izev and Mikhailova. The length of the Shatt al-Arab, which connects the Euphrates and the Tigris with the Persian Gulf, is given by various sources as 145 to 195 kilometers. Both the Kara-Su and the Murat-Su rise northwest from Lake Van at elevations of 3,290 meters and 3,520 meters AMSL, respectively. At the location of the Kaban Dam, the two rivers, now combined into the Euphrates, have dropped to an elevation of 693 meters AMSL. From Kaban to the Syrian-Turkish border, the river drops another 368 meters over a distance of less than 600 kilometers. Once the Euphrates enters the upper Mesopotamian plains, its grade drops significantly. Within Syria the river falls 163 meters, while over the last stretch between Hit and the Shatt al-Arab the river drops only 55 meters. Discharge of the Euphrates. The Euphrates receives most of its water in the form of rainfall and melting snow, resulting in peak volumes during the months April through May. Discharge in these 2 months accounts for 36% of the total annual discharge of the Euphrates, or even 60 to 70% according to one source. While low runoff occurs in summer and autumn, the average natural annual flow of the Euphrates has been determined from early and mid-20th century records as 20.9 cubic kilometers at Kaban, 36.6 cubic kilometers at Hit and 21.5 cubic kilometers at Hindia. However, these averages mask the high interannual variability in discharge at Birisik, just north of the Syro-Turkish border. Annual discharges have been measured that ranged from a low volume of 15.3 cubic kilometers in 1961 to a high of 42.7 cubic kilometers in 1963. The discharge regime of the Euphrates has changed dramatically since the construction of the first dams in the 1970s. Data on Euphrates discharge collected after 1990 show the impact of the construction of the numerous dams in the Euphrates and of the increased withdrawal of water for irrigation. Average discharge at HIT after 1990 has dropped to 356 cubic meters per second per year. The seasonal variability has equally changed. The pre-1990 peak volume recorded at HIT was 7,510 cubic meters per second, while after 1990 it is only 2,514 cubic meters per second. The minimum volume at HIT remained relatively unchanged, rising from 55 cubic meters per second before 1990 to 58 cubic meters per second afterward. Tributaries in Syria, 3 rivers add their water to the Euphrates: the Sadja, the Balik and the Khabur. These rivers rise in the foothills of the Taurus Mountains along the Syro-Turkish border and add comparatively little water to the Euphrates. The Sadja is the smallest of these tributaries, emerging from 2 streams near Gaziantep and draining the plain around Manbij before emptying into the reservoir of the Tishran Dam. The Balik receives most of its water from a karstic spring near Ain al-Aris and flows due south until it reaches the Euphrates at the city of al-Raqqa. In terms of length, drainage basin and discharge, the Khabur is the largest of these 3. Its main karstic springs are located around Ras al-Ain, from where the Khabur flows southeast past al-Hasakah, where the river turns south and drains into the Euphrates near Busiri. Once the Euphrates enters Iraq, there are no more natural tributaries to the Euphrates. Although canals connecting the Euphrates basin with the Tigris basin exist, watershed, the drainage basins of the Karasu and the Murat River cover an area of 22,000 square kilometers and 40,000 square kilometers, respectively. The estimates that have been made for the area of the Euphrates drainage basin vary widely, from a low 233,000 square kilometers to a high 766,000 square kilometers. Recent estimates put the basin area at 388,000 square kilometers, 444,000 square kilometers and 579,314 square kilometers. The greater part of the Euphrates basin is located in Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. According to both Dowdy and Frenken, Turkey's share is 28%, Syria's is 17% and that of Iraq is 40%. Izev and Mikhailova estimate the percentages of the drainage basin lying within Turkey, Syria and Iraq at 33, 20 and 47% respectively. Some sources estimate that approximately 15% of the drainage basin is located within Saudi Arabia, while a small part falls inside the borders of Kuwait. Finally, some sources also include Jordan in the drainage basin of the Euphrates. A small part of the eastern desert drains toward the east rather than to the west. Natural history. The Euphrates flows through a number of distinct vegetation zones. Although millennia-long human occupation in most parts of the Euphrates basin has significantly degraded the landscape, patches of original vegetation remain. The steady drop in annual rainfall from the sources of the Euphrates toward the Persian Gulf is a strong determinant for the vegetation that can be supported. In its upper reaches, the Euphrates flows through the mountains of southeast Turkey and their southern foothills, which support a xeric woodland. Plant species in the moister parts of this zone include various oaks, pistachio trees, and rosaceae. The drier parts of the xeric woodland zone supports less dense oak forest and rosaceae. Here can also be found the wild variants of many cereals, including einkorn wheat, emmer wheat, oat and rye. South of this zone lies a zone of mixed woodland steppe vegetation. Between Raqqa and the Syro-Iraqi border, the Euphrates flows through a steppe landscape. This steppe is characterized by white wormwood and chenopodiaceae. Throughout history, this zone has been heavily overgrazed due to the practicing of sheep and goat pastoralism by its inhabitants. Southeast of the border between Syria and Iraq starts true desert. This zone supports either no vegetation at all or small pockets of Chenopodiaceae or Poaceae. Although today nothing of it survives due to human interference, research suggests that the Euphrates Valley would have supported a riverine forest. Species characteristic of this type of forest include the oriental plane, the Euphrates poplar, the tamarisk, the ash and various wetland plants. Among the fish species in the Tigris-Euphrates basin, the family of the Cyprinidae are the most common, with 34 species out of 52 in total. Among the cyprinids, the manga has good sport fishing qualities, leading the British to nickname it Tigris salmon. The Raphitus euphraticus is an endangered soft-shelled turtle that is limited to the Tigris-Euphrates river system. The Neo-Assyrian palace reliefs from the 1st millennium BCE depict lion and bull hunts in fertile landscapes. 16th to 19th century European travelers in the Syrian Euphrates basin reported on an abundance of animals living in the area, many of which have become rare or even extinct. Species like gazelle, onager and the now extinct Arabian ostrich lived in the steppe bordering the Euphrates Valley, while the valley itself was home to the wild boar. Carnivorous species include the grey wolf, the golden jackal, the red fox, the leopard and the lion. The Syrian brown bear can be found in the mountains of southeast Turkey. The presence of European beaver has been attested in the bone assemblage of the prehistoric site of Abu Hurairah in Syria, but the beaver has never been cited in historical times. River modifications. The Hindia barrage on the Iraqi Euphrates, based on plans by the British civil engineer William Wilcox and finished in 1913, was the first modern water diversion structure built in the Tigris-Euphrates river system. The Hindia barrage was followed in the 1950s by the Ramadi barrage and the nearby Abadibis regulator, regulate the flow regime of the Euphrates and to discharge excess flood water into the depression that is now Lake Habriya. Iraq's largest dam on the Euphrates is the Haditha Dam, a 9-kilometer-long earth-filled dam creating Lake Qadisiyah. Syria and Turkey built their first dams in the Euphrates in the 1970s. The Tabqa Dam in Syria was completed in 1973 while Turkey finished the Kaban Dam, a prelude to the immense southeastern Anatolia project, in 1974. Since then, Syria has built 2 more dams in the Euphrates, the Bath Dam and the Tishrin Dam, and plans to build a 4th dam, the Halabia Dam, between Araka and Deir ez-Zor. The Tabqa Dam is Syria's largest dam and its reservoir is an important source of irrigation and drinking water. It was planned that 640,000 hectares should be irrigated from Lake Assad, but in 2000 only 100,000–124,000 hectares had been realized. Syria also built 3 smaller dams on the Kaba and its tributaries. With the implementation of the Southeastern Anatolia project in the 1970s, Turkey launched an ambitious plan to harness the waters of the Tigris and the Euphrates for irrigation and hydroelectricity production and provide an economic stimulus to its southeastern provinces. GAP affects a total area of 75,000 square kilometers and approximately 7 million people, representing about 10% of Turkey's total surface area and population, respectively. When completed, GAP will consist of 22 dams, including the Kaban Dam, and 19 power plants and provide irrigation water to 1,700,000 hectares of agricultural land, which is about 20% of the irrigable land in Turkey. Circa 910,000 hectares of this irrigated land is located in the Euphrates basin. By far the largest dam in GAP is the Ataturk Dam, located circa 55 kilometers northwest of Sanliurfa. This 184-meter-high and 1,820-meter-long dam was completed in 1992, thereby creating a reservoir that is the 3rd largest lake in Turkey. With a maximum capacity of 48.7 cubic kilometers, the Ataturk Dam reservoir is large enough to hold the entire annual discharge of the Euphrates. Completion of GAP was scheduled for 2010 but has been delayed because the World Bank has withheld funding due to the lack of an official agreement on water sharing between Turkey and the downstream states on the Euphrates and the Tigris. Apart from barrages and dams, Iraq has also created an intricate network of canals connecting the Euphrates with Lake Habriya, Lake Thartha, and Abadibas Reservoir, all of which can be used to store excess floodwater. Via the Shat al-Hay, the Euphrates is connected with the Tigris. The largest canal in this network is the main outfall drain or so-called Third River, constructed between 1953 and 1992. This 565-kilometer-long canal is intended to drain the area between the Euphrates and the Tigris south of Baghdad to prevent soil salinization from irrigation. It also allows large freight barges to navigate up to Baghdad. Environmental and social effects. The construction of the dams and irrigation schemes on the Euphrates has had a significant impact on the environment and society of each riparian country. The dams constructed as part of GAP, in both the Euphrates and the Tigris basins, have affected 382 villages and almost 200,000 people have been resettled elsewhere. The largest number of people was displaced by the building of the Ataturk Dam, which alone affected 55,300 people. A survey among those who were displaced showed that the majority were unhappy with their new situation and that the compensation they had received was considered insufficient. The flooding of Lake Assad led to the forced displacement of circa 4,000 families, who were resettled in other parts of northern Syria as part of a now-abandoned plan to create an Arab belt along the borders with Turkey and Iraq. Apart from the changes in the discharge regime of the river, the numerous dams and irrigation projects have also had other effects on the environment. The creation of reservoirs with large surfaces in countries with high average temperatures has led to increased evaporation, thereby reducing the total amount of water that is available for human use. Annual evaporation from reservoirs has been estimated at 2 cubic kilometers in Turkey, 1 cubic kilometer in Syria and 5 cubic kilometers in Iraq. Water quality in the Iraqi Euphrates is low because irrigation water tapped in Turkey and Syria flows back into the river, together with dissolved fertilizer chemicals used on the fields. The salinity of Euphrates water in Iraq has increased as a result of upstream dam construction, leading to lower suitability as drinking water. The many dams and irrigation schemes, and the associated large-scale water abstraction, have also had a detrimental effect on the ecologically already fragile Mesopotamian marshes and on freshwater fish habitats in Iraq. The inundation of large parts of the Euphrates Valley, especially in Turkey and Syria, has led to the flooding of many archaeological sites and other places of cultural significance. Although concerted efforts have been made to record or save as much of the endangered cultural heritage as possible, many sites are probably lost forever. The combined GAP projects on the Turkish Euphrates have led to major international efforts to document the archaeological and cultural heritage of the endangered parts of the valley. Especially the flooding of Zergma with its unique Roman mosaics by the reservoir of the Birisik Dam has generated much controversy in both the Turkish and international press. The construction of the Tabqa Dam in Syria led to a large international campaign coordinated by UNESCO to document the heritage that would disappear under the waters of Lake Assad. Archaeologists from numerous countries excavated sites ranging in date from the Nachafian to the Abbasi period, and 2 minarets were dismantled and rebuilt outside the flood zone. Important sites that have been flooded or affected by the rising waters of Lake Assad include Muraybet, Emar and Abu Huraira. A similar international effort was made when the Tishrin Dam was constructed, which led, among others, to the flooding of the important pre-pottery Neolithic site of Jerf El Arma. An archaeological survey and rescue excavations were also carried out in the area flooded by Lake Qadisiyah in Iraq. Parts of the flooded area have recently become accessible again due to the drying up of the lake, resulting not only in new possibilities for archaeologists to do more research, but also providing opportunities for looting, which has been rampant elsewhere in Iraq in the wake of the 2003 invasion.